The Leopard by Giuseppe Tomasi Di Lampedusa is a 1958 novel published the year after the author's death. This is his only novel, written in Italian. This is a English translation by Archibald Colquhoun. We'll see. I'll put the name up there and you can decide on the spelling. I picked this up while I was in Italy. And in Italy, I mispronounced all the Italian words, and I watched the winces and watched all the kind of like shivers as I mangled Italian. So please don't take that as an offense. Just take that as evidence of my lack of why I'm reading this in translation. But yes, so as the back of the book says, this is in the spring of 1860. Fabrizio, the charismatic Prince of Salina, still rules over thousands of acres and hundreds of people, including his own numerous family, in mingled splendor and squalor. Then comes Garibaldi's landing in Sicily, and the prince must decide whether to resist the forces of change or come to terms with them. And this is a novel which, it starts in 1860 and it kind of spreads out across the years. Each chapter is actually, it's almost its own little novel. They're so kind of dense and lushly written and packed full of metaphor and just gorgeous sentences in this translation. I love the writing in this book. It's got this kind of it's very much the end of an era feel to it. It is the birth of Italy as a nation state, but it is also the end of something. And this is told from the viewpoint, primarily from the viewpoint of Fabrizio, Prince Don Fabrizio, who is of that older generation, and is in a lot of ways a good kind of introduction to what Italy is today and the problems that Italy still has today. Very much of, they did not so much have a unification as they had a civil war. When they talk about Garibaldi's forces arriving in Sicily, this wasn't like everyone's welcoming them. There was a battle, however big or small, that the South was absorbed by the North, and you get that. There's almost like I almost do get the sense of like kind of the states where if instead of having their first war of independence, they had started off with a civil war, and indeed you get that sense of there's a lot of disunity in this book, and how awkwardly and in some ways corruptly Sicily gets incorporated in to the rest of Italy, and how this kind of ill start made for kind of more of the same in some ways. There's a refrain in this book from Don Fabrizio of like, everything is going to change, but at the same time nothing is. And there's that sense of that kind of the almost he talks about kind of Fabrizio. The narrator talk about kind of an intransigence of like how slow change takes. Like it's going to take many generations if it does indeed take of this idea of Italy. So it's a great book that way. This gets dramatized also in kind of the fall of the classes that Don Fabrizio has. He's got his own sons, but he doesn't really care about them. He's got this nephew, Tancredi, who instead of marrying Don Fabrizio's daughter, ends up marrying the daughter of a kind of a nouveau riche guy who's coming up. He's the new class, and is knows how to grease the wheels, but has none of the class of the prince, but he's like kind of this is the new man, the new generation. And indeed and the marriage itself is seen as just sort of, it's a unification, and there's going to be a brief moment of happiness, but the narrator very quickly says, this is going to be it. This little bit, a couple of weeks beforehand and a bit afterwards, it's going to be like gorgeous and sensuously written, and they're gonna explore this kind of this cavernous mansion, which has got all these dark, deep rooms which seems to have like kind of sums up the history of this aristocratic people, and it's like, but it's also got a lot of what seems like almost like the Marquis de Sade lurking inside it. The ghost. There's rooms in here where there's like torture. There's like the whip is in this book, and their unification is somewhat like that. However, we're getting into the new world, and indeed it's Angelica, who is this the poor man's daughter. She is actually the one who is going to sort of rise and will become involved in politics. Not within the scope of this book, but this book's scope is like it goes from 1860 to like I feel like it's like right up till 1857 to 1856 or whatever, and even beyond there, because it's a book that talks about, well, if we're going to lose kind of the aristocracy, and we're going to lose the religious kind of the monks and all that, the two groups that this book makes no compunction about kind of saying exactly how corrupt and dumb and degraded they were. Well, it's just going to get replaced by another class that is going to have some kind of sacred text, which it's going to say, we are the only ones who can read it, which you can see as Marxism, or just like, just the intelligentsia, and also just like the new money coming up, and how they're going to run things for their benefit, not necessarily for the benefit of all. So yeah, it's a wonderful, lush book. I run to Proust a lot, but I think about Proust here because I think about Proust writing about in remembrance, in time, in search of lost time, of that kind of that cusp point of the old going from the old aristocracy to kind of a more modern thing of like pre-World War, just into World War I. And this has got the kind of that same feeling. And Don Fabrizio, who is he's got his mistress, he's got kind of pretty blinkered views on women, and you see him as the old type, but we also have his daughter, the one that Tancredi decided he didn't want to marry because she made fun of him, and she is indeed the one. She is the one that gets the last word in this book, which I think is interesting because at his death she is silent, but we go past his death. Spoilers. We go past his death into kind of a more modern era. And we get her views on things, and I really enjoyed that. I thought that it's like, okay, this isn't just Lampedusa, he's like, the Fabrizio is a character in this book, and he is, but he's also seeing things from the point of view of this daughter, who Don Fabrizio sort of casts to one side. So, Tancredi is going to do what he wants to do, and I don't have any hard feelings about that. It's like, yeah, and this daughter who's kind of left on the pile there it has to kind of scrabble there at the end in the leavings of the book. So yes, a really great read. It's really a shame that there aren't many more novels by this author, but it's the kind of novel that I can see going back and rereading again and again. There's some reviews of, I think the Book Chemist has done a review on this, which I'm going to go and watch right now, and I'll leave a link down below because I'm sure he'll have much more deeper and more ruminated thoughts over it. Whereas I've been holding on to this book for the longest of time in my head, trying to kind of like come up with something to say, I guess, or just kind of cogitating my thoughts on it. It's like, I think my biggest thought on this is I need to reread it. I need to reread this book. This was a fabulous book. And yeah, so that's all I have to say. More videos later.